The aurora borealis doesn't make sound, but every man in our convoy swore they could hear it, a low, vibrating hum that made your teeth ache and your stomach turn. I'm Master Sergeant David Carver, Delta Force, call sign Iceman, and I've operated in 14 countries across 4 continents: Iraq, Syria, Somalia, Yemen. I knew heat and dust and urban warfare like the back of my hand. But in February 2019, I found myself in the one place that terrified me more than any desert firefight, 60 kilometers inside the Russian border, during a joint black operation that officially never happened. The mission brief came through encrypted channels 3 days prior at our staging area in northern Finland. A joint NATO-Russian intelligence asset, codenamed Nightingale, had gone dark while investigating an abandoned Soviet research facility in the Kola Peninsula. The facility, designated Object 47 Sigma, had been sealed since 1987, lost in the chaos of Glasnost, and forgotten until Nightingale's signals intelligence suggested someone had reopened it. Our 8-man team was tasked with infiltration, asset recovery, and site assessment. Officially, we were advisors on a training exercise. Unofficially, we were ghosts crossing a border that could trigger World War III if anyone found out. The Russian liaison, a Spetsnaz operator who introduced himself only as Volkov, briefed us in a language that was more grunt than grammar. Facility was psychotronics research, Soviet mind weapons program. You understand? I understood classified. I understood black budget. What I didn't understand was why his hand shook slightly when he showed us photographs of Object 47 Sigma, a concrete bunker complex built into a mountainside, blast doors wide open like a mouth screaming into the snow. Local Sami people have legends, Volkov continued, lighting a cigarette with fingers that trembled. They say mountain is Saivu, place where dead go but do not rest. They will not guide us within 20 kilometers. My team lead, Lieutenant Colonel James Priest Matthews, was a career operator who'd been with the unit since before 9/11. He studied the photographs with the kind of focus that made junior officers nervous. What kind of research, specifically? Classified, Volkov said, but psychotronics, frequency weapons, human resonance experiments. He paused, smoke curling from his nostrils. Subjects were political prisoners, many subjects. Jesus, muttered Sergeant First Class Miguel Santos, our team medic. He was the most superstitious operator I'd ever worked with, carrying his grandmother's rosary on every mission. How many is many? We loaded into 2 Sisu XA-180 APCs at 1800 hours, modified for Arctic warfare with additional heating systems and sound dampening. The Finnish military had loaned us the vehicles with the understanding they'd never ask what we did with them. 8 Americans, 4 Russians, Volkov, and 3 of his Spetsnaz team, and enough firepower to level a small town. The temperature was -32 Celsius, the kind of cold that makes your lungs burn with each breath, that freezes your snot before it can drip, that kills exposed skin in minutes. We wore white winter warfare gear over our body armor, balaclavas under our helmets, thermal gloves that made trigger discipline a conscious effort. Comms check, I said into my bone mic as we rolled out. My HK-416 sat across my lap, loaded with 5.56 NATO rounds that I'd personally inspected. In this cold, a malfunction could mean death. Santos, good copy. Rodriguez, good copy. Our communications specialist, Sergeant First Class Paul Rodriguez, was running a portable satellite uplink that would give us a narrow window to call for extraction if needed. Jenkins, solid. Staff Sergeant Robert Jenkins was our breacher, carrying enough C4 to crack any door we'd encounter. Turner, check. Sergeant First Class Alex Turner, our sniper, looked uncomfortable in close quarters. He was used to operating at 1,000 yards, not inside metal boxes. Washington, good. Sergeant First Class Marcus Washington was our intel specialist, carrying a ruggedized laptop loaded with everything we knew about Object 47 Sigma, which wasn't much. Murphy, check. Staff Sergeant Sean Murphy rounded out our assault element, a quiet Irishman from Boston who'd been with the unit for 6 years. Priest's voice came through last. Priest, good. Volkov, your people on comms? Russian channel separate, Volkov said. But we hear you, we see you, we help you. The convoy pushed north through landscape that looked like God had given up halfway through creating it. Endless snow, skeletal birch forests, mountains that rose like broken teeth against the green shimmer of the aurora. No roads, just frozen tundra and GPS coordinates that led us deeper into territory marked restricted on every map. I listened. Beneath the normal white noise of our encrypted channel, there was something else, a rhythmic pulse, like voices singing in harmony, but distorted and wrong. Atmospheric interference, Priest said. Aurora plays hell with radio frequencies. But Washington was checking his laptop, frowning at the screen. Sir, that's not interference. That's a signal. Repeating every 43 seconds. It's coming from the facility. Nightingale? I asked. Wrong frequency. This is older. Much older. Washington's fingers flew across the keyboard. Signal architecture suggests Soviet-era equipment. But it's active. Something's broadcasting. Volkov's voice cut through in broken English. Impossible. Facility has no power since 1987. Well, something's powering it now, Rodriguez said. The singing in the static grew louder, more distinct. Not words, at least not in any language I recognized, but definitely human voices. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all harmonizing in a frequency that made my back teeth vibrate. Santos crossed himself. That's not right. That's not natural. Lock it down, Santos, Priest ordered. We're 40 minutes from the objective. Everyone check your gear. NVGs, thermals, backup batteries. When we insert, I want total darkness discipline. This is a stealth approach until we're compromised. I checked my equipment with mechanical precision, the same ritual I'd performed on 100 ops. Magazine seated, chamber clear, safety on, grenade pouches accessible, knife secured, medical kit on my left hip. But my hands were shaking slightly, and it wasn't from the cold. The singing in the radio grew louder. At 21:30 hours, we dismounted 1 kilometer south of Object 47 Sigma. The APCs would hold position as our emergency extraction point, engines running, gunners scanning through thermal optics for any threats. The Russian contingent would establish a perimeter while our team pushed to the facility. The cold hit like a physical blow. Even through my layers, I could feel it seeking entry, looking for any gap in my defenses. My breath came out in clouds of vapor that froze instantly into ice crystals. Diamond formation, Priest ordered. Iceman, you have point. Murphy, rear security. Keep interval at 10 meters. Move. We moved across the snowfield like wraiths, thermal dampening gear making us nearly invisible to electronic surveillance. The aurora painted everything in shades of green and violet, bright enough to navigate without NVGs, but unstable enough to play tricks on your eyes. Object 47. Sigma rose from the mountainside like a concrete tumor. 3 stories of Soviet brutalist architecture, reinforced blast doors designed to withstand a nuclear strike. But those doors hung open, and from inside came a faint glow that pulsed in rhythm with the singing we'd heard on the radio. I raised my fist. Halt signal. Through my scope, I scanned the entrance. No visible guards. No footprints in the snow. No heat signatures. Washington, you seeing this? I subvocalized into my mic. Affirmative. No thermal readings. But that light, it's moving, like it's alive. The light was blue-white, flickering from somewhere deep inside the facility. It illuminated the falling snow in stuttering flashes, creating shadows that seemed to reach out from the doorway. Nightingale could be inside, Priest said. We push forward. Standard room clearing procedures. Iceman, Jenkins, your first element. Santos, Rodriguez, your second. Turner, Murphy, rear guard with me. Volkov's team holds the entrance. We closed the distance in 30 seconds, weapons up, sectors of fire established. The entrance loomed before us, 15 feet wide, blast doors massive enough to stop a tank shell. Beyond them, a corridor disappeared into darkness, interrupted only by that pulsing blue light. Jenkins ran a handheld radiation detector along the doorframe. Clean, no rads. I activated my weapon light and stepped inside. The temperature dropped another 10 degrees immediately. My breath crystallized mid-air, falling like snow. The walls were concrete, stained with rust, and something darker that could have been old blood or chemical residue. Cyrillic writing covered every surface, some official signage, but most of it graffitied, desperate, scratched into the concrete by fingernails or knives. Washington, you read Cyrillic? I asked. Some. That one says they're still singing. That one says cover your ears. That one, he paused. That one says don't let them finish the choir. The singing grew louder, not from our radios anymore, but from deeper in the facility. Human voices raised in harmony, perfect pitch, but layered over each other until the melody became something alien and wrong. We advanced down the corridor in textbook formation, checking corners, clearing doorways. Every room we passed was empty, but showed signs of violent abandonment. Overturned furniture, scattered papers, brown stains on the floors that looked like dried blood. "Contact front!" Jenkins hissed. I snapped my weapon up, finger on the trigger. At the end of the corridor, illuminated by that pulsing blue light, stood a figure, human-shaped. Definitely human-shaped. But it stood perfectly still, facing away from us, head tilted back as if staring at the ceiling. It wore what looked like a Soviet military uniform, but the fabric hung on its frame like it was 2 sizes too large. "Federal agents!" I shouted in Russian, one of 3 phrases I'd memorized for the op. "Identify yourself!" The figure didn't move, didn't turn, but the singing stopped. In the sudden silence, I could hear my own heartbeat, hear Santos breathing too fast behind me, hear the hum of the facility's electrical systems that shouldn't have existed. "Washington, get a thermal on that target," Priest ordered. "Sir, I'm getting nothing. No heat signature. It's the same temperature as the walls." The figure's head began to turn, slowly, mechanically, like a rusty gear forcing itself to rotate. When it faced us, I saw what used to be a face, skin gray and waxy, eyes sunken into black pits, mouth open in a perfect O shape. And then it began to sing, not words, pure tone. A single note that resonated in my chest cavity, made my vision blur, made my hands go numb. The note held and held and held, impossible for human lungs, and then another figure stepped from a doorway behind the first. Then another. Then another. 7 figures, all in Soviet uniforms, all with that same gray skin and hollow eyes, all singing the same impossible note in perfect harmony. "Fall back!" Priest shouted. "Disengage! Disengage!" We backed down the corridor, weapons trained on the figures that weren't advancing, weren't attacking, just standing and singing. The note grew louder, more complex, harmonics building on harmonics, until it felt like the walls themselves were vibrating. Santos fired. 3-round burst, center mass on the nearest figure. The rounds punched through its chest, exiting in sprays of dust and dried tissue, but the figure didn't fall, didn't react, just kept singing. "They're dead," Santos gasped. "Jesus Christ, they're already dead." More figures emerged from doorways, dozens of them filling the corridor, all adding their voices to the chorus. The sound became physical, a pressure wave that made my ears bleed, made my nose gush blood that froze instantly on my face. We stumbled into the snow outside, gasping, ears ringing. Volkov and his team had their weapons up, scanning for threats they couldn't see. "Report!" Volkov barked. "Contacts inside," Priest said, wiping blood from his nose. "Non-responsive to verbal commands or gunfire. Some kind of... I don't know what the hell they are." "Saivu," Volkov whispered. "The dead who do not rest." Behind us, the singing continued, spilling from the facility entrance like poison gas. And in that song, I could hear words now. Russian words, repeated over and over. "Pomogite nam. Pomogite nam." "Help us! Help us!" "Nightingale's still in there," Washington said, checking his equipment. Asset tracker shows her phone signal coming from sub-level 2. She's either alive and transmitting, or her phone's been left as bait. Priest looked at the facility, at the figures visible through the doorway, still singing. "We need a new approach. Ideas?" "Thermite," Jenkins suggested. "Burn the whole place down." "Asset recovery is primary objective," Priest countered. "Nightingale might have intelligence worth more than all our lives." I stared at those singing figures, at the blue light pulsing behind them, and felt something I hadn't felt in 8 years of combat operations. Absolute, primal terror. "We go in," I heard myself say. "But we go in smart, full protective gear, ear protection. We move fast, grab Nightingale and extract. 5 minutes, in and out." "And if those things attack?" Murphy asked. I didn't have an answer. I didn't think anyone did. "Because the dead don't attack. The dead don't move. The dead don't sing." But in Object 47 Sigma, they did all 3. We staged our second insertion in the lee of the concrete blast barrier, using the APC's thermal imaging to map the interior. The facility branched into a maze of corridors and stairwells, all leading down into the mountain where the Soviet researchers had built their laboratories deep enough to survive any bombing campaign. "Sub-level 2 is here," Washington said, pointing to his laptop screen. 3 possible routes: central stairwell, eastern maintenance shaft, or western cargo elevator. "Stairwell's suicide," Jenkins said. "Single file, no maneuverability. They'd bottle us up." "Elevator requires power," Rodriguez added. "And I don't trust any power source in that place." "Maintenance shaft," I said. "It's tight, but we can descend in pairs. Faster exit if we need to haul ass. Priest nodded. We'll split into 2 elements. I'll take Jenkins, Rodriguez, and Murphy down the maintenance shaft to sublevel 2. Iceman, you take Santos, Turner, and Washington through the central corridor as a diversion. Draw their attention, whatever they are. Give us time to locate Nightingale. Then we improvise. Priest checked his watch. Insertion in 10 minutes. Volkov, your team provides overwatch. If we're not back in 30 minutes, you seal this facility and call in an airstrike. Volkov nodded grimly. Understood. But I tell you now, what is inside, airstrike will not kill. This place should be filled with concrete, buried, forgotten. 30 minutes, Priest repeated. We loaded up on hearing protection. Foam plugs under our communication headsets. Volume limiters engaged. If that singing could make us bleed from pressure alone, we needed every advantage. Santos distributed chemical light sticks, the kind that glow steady green for 12 hours. Battery-powered lights could fail. Fire was reliable. I don't like this, Santos muttered, loading fresh magazines into his vest. Those things, whatever they are, they're not natural. They're not right. I activated a light stick and watched the green glow illuminate my gloved hands. In 8 years of operations, I'd learned to trust my instincts, and every instinct I had was screaming to get back in the APC and drive until we hit the Finnish border. But Nightingale was in there, and operators don't leave people behind. Stay tight, I said, leading my element into the corridor. Watch your sectors. These things move silent, so trust your peripherals. The green glow of our chemical lights mixed with that pulsing blue luminescence, creating shadows that danced and writhed on the walls. The Cyrillic graffiti seemed to shimmer in the light. Don't let them finish the choir. Clear, I confirmed. They disappeared down a side corridor, and suddenly it was just the 4 of us, me, Santos, Turner, and Washington, moving deeper into Object 47 Sigma. The central corridor sloped downward at a steady grade, wide enough for 3 men abreast, but with a ceiling that pressed low overhead. Doorways lined both sides, leading to rooms filled with rusted equipment and scattered papers. In one room, I saw what looked like a dentist's chair with leather restraints. In another, a wall covered with photographs of faces, hundreds of them, prisoners maybe, all staring at the camera with expressions of absolute terror. "Iceman, check this," Washington called from ahead. He stood before a large double door marked in Cyrillic. "Testing Chamber 3. Authorized personnel only." The door stood ajar. That blue light pulsed from within, brighter here, almost blinding. I pushed the door open with my rifle barrel. The chamber beyond was enormous. An amphitheater carved into solid rock, 40 feet across with a domed ceiling. And everywhere, standing on the floor, sitting in rows of chairs, suspended from the ceiling by chains, were bodies. Hundreds of bodies. Thousands, maybe. All dressed in prison uniforms, all perfectly preserved in the Arctic cold. All with their mouths open in that same perfect O-shape. And they were all glowing with that blue light, emanating from their mouths and eyes and fingertips, creating a constellation of eerie luminescence. "Mother of God," Santos whispered. The singing intensified. Every body in the chamber was producing that sound, that harmony, building and building until the chamber itself resonated like the inside of a bell. The blue light pulsed in time with the music, growing brighter with each cycle. "Washington, what is this?" I demanded, backing toward the door. He was reading from his laptop, scrolling through classified files. Psychotronic resonance experiments. The Soviets believed they could weaponize human consciousness. They exposed prisoners to specific frequencies, trying to create a collective consciousness, a hive mind that could project thoughts across distance. "Did it work?" Turner asked. "But someone reopened it," I said. "Nightingale," Washington confirmed. "She was investigating a signals intelligence anomaly. She must have traced it here, and..." A scream cut through the singing. Human, female, coming from deeper in the facility. "Nightingale," Santos started forward, but I grabbed his vest. "Could be a trap. Could be one of them. Or it could be our asset dying." Santos shook me off and ran toward the sound, Turner following close behind. I keyed my radio. "Priest, we have screams on our level. Moving to investigate. May have found Nightingale." Static answered me. Then faintly, distorted by interference. "On tact. Multiple. Can't." "Say again, Priest, you're breaking up." "Nothing. Just that singing, bleeding through every frequency." "Washington, we're moving." I said, pulling him away from the chamber of bodies. Stay close. We ran down the corridor, following Santos and Turner toward the source of the screaming. The facility seemed to shift around us, corridors branching in ways that didn't match our maps, doors appearing where none should exist. That blue light pulsed faster now, frantic, like a heartbeat racing toward cardiac arrest. We found Santos and Turner at a door marked Observation Room 7 Dros. Inside, strapped to a chair identical to the ones we'd seen in the testing chamber, was a woman in civilian clothes, mid-30s, dark hair matted with blood, eyes wide with terror. She was alive, conscious, and screaming as the bodies around her sang, because she wasn't alone. 6 of those gray figures stood in a circle around her, hands outstretched, mouths open, all singing directly at her. "Federal agents!" I shouted, knowing it was useless. "Step away from the prisoner!" The figures didn't react. They just kept singing, and as they sang, the woman in the chair began to change. Her skin grew pale, gray, waxy. Her eyes sank into their sockets. Her mouth opened wider than human anatomy allowed, jaw dislocating with a wet crunch, and she began to sing with them. "Shoot them!" Santos screamed, opening fire. His rounds punched through the figures, through the walls, through everything, but they didn't stop. More figures emerged from the shadows, dozens of them, all converging on our position. "Fall back!" I ordered, dragging Santos toward the exit. "She's gone! Nightingale is gone!" But Turner didn't move. He stood transfixed, watching the woman transform, listening to that harmony that was now perfect, complete, whole. "Turner, move!" I grabbed his shoulder. His eyes were glazed. His mouth had begun to open, and from deep in his throat, I heard him trying to match their pitch. I slapped him, hard. The shock broke whatever spell had gripped him, and he stumbled backward, gasping. The corridor behind us filled with singing figures, an army of the dead advancing in perfect unison, their voices building to a crescendo that made the walls crack and dust fall from the ceiling. We ran through that maze of Soviet nightmares, following our chemical light trail back toward the entrance. Behind us, the singing grew louder, more insistent, more complete. They had Nightingale. They had their missing voice. Whatever choir they were building, it was almost finished. "Priest!" I shouted into my radio. "Priest, respond!" His voice came through, barely audible. "Trapped. Maintenance shaft. Everywhere. Can't." "They're in the walls!" Priest gasped. "The whole facility is full of them. Thousands!" Behind us, from every corridor, from every doorway, from every crack in the concrete, they came. The singing dead of Object 47 Sigma, all moving with singular purpose, all adding their voices to a harmony that was now complete. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't an experiment that failed. This was an experiment that succeeded. "Volkov!" I screamed into the radio. "Blow the entrance! Blow it now! But you are still... Do it!" We ran into the snow as the charges detonated behind us, bringing down tons of concrete and steel in a thunder that drowned out even that perfect, terrible singing. The blast wave threw us forward, and I felt heat on my back even through my gear. When the dust cleared, Object 47 Sigma was sealed, buried. The blast doors completely collapsed, the entrance filled with rubble, but from beneath the concrete, I could still hear them singing. The extraction took 40 minutes. The APCs racing south through driving snow while Rodriguez bled out in the back, despite everything Santos tried. He died with his eyes open, staring at nothing, his mouth moving silently as if trying to form words we couldn't hear. We crossed back into Finland at 0347 hours. Officially, we'd never been to Russia. Officially, Object 47 Sigma remained sealed and forgotten. Officially, the joint operation never happened. But 3 days later, Washington received a signals intelligence report from NATO monitoring stations. They detected a transmission from the Kola Peninsula, a signal in the same frequency range as the singing we'd heard. It was broadcasting continuously, growing stronger each day, reaching farther into the atmosphere. And it was being answered. Similar signals had started appearing at abandoned Soviet facilities across Russia, places that had been sealed, forgotten, left to rot. All of them psychotronics research sites. All of them now active. The choir wasn't finished. It was growing. Turner committed suicide 2 weeks after we returned to the States. Left no note. His apartment neighbors reported hearing him singing in Russian for hours before he pulled the trigger. Santos requested a transfer out of Special Operations. Last I heard, he joined a monastery in New Mexico, taken a vow of silence. Priest retired and disappeared. No forwarding address, no contact information, just gone. I still hear them sometimes, in the space between sleeping and waking. That perfect harmony, calling across the darkness, asking me to add my voice, promising me that death is not an ending, but a beginning. The aurora borealis doesn't make sound, I know that. I've always known that. But when I see those green lights dancing in the northern sky, I swear I can hear them singing. And sometimes late at night when I'm alone, I find myself humming along.